Welcome back, everyone. My name is Joe, and over the last year, I have documented my journey of writing a first novel. In fact, a trilogy of novels called Rivendell. I live with my husband Richard and our granddaughter Hannah on 6 acres of land nestled in the wilds of Virginia. Every Monday, I post a video sharing the joys and challenges of writing a first novel. In this week's video, I'll be reviewing another treasured book in my collection, Salem's Lot by Stephen King. So come along and join me in my adventures in living as a writer and an artist. Hey everyone, welcome back to my author's channel here on YouTube. Today I want to wish everybody a happy Valentine's Day for all those romantics and lovers out there. But in today's video, I'm offering up a review of Stephen King's classic, Salem's Lot. It's one of my top 5 books of all time. So this is one I'm really going to enjoy doing. Before I begin, I want to give you guys a quick update on my progress with Rivendell, Wings of Shadow, which is the first book in my trilogy of novels, my Rivendell trilogy. I feel like I made a lot of headway this week, but it's a little bit slower than last week. As I promised, I want to kind of give you all an update each week of the progress of the book and where I kind of stand with it. At the beginning of each video, just to kind of give you a progress report. I feel like I'm a little slower this week, though I'm, cutting into some of the hard stuff that I need to get through in order to finish up that middle section. Slow is not perfect, but it's better than no writing at all. So I'll go ahead and take that. Anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a quick update before I dive into my review of Salem's Lot. An excerpt of Salem's Lot by Stephen King. By 7 o'clock, the panoply of colors on the horizon has shrunk to a bitter orange line on the western horizon, as if furnace fires had been banked beyond the edge of the world. In the east, the stars are already out. They gleam steadily like fierce diamonds. There is no mercy in them at this time of year, no comfort for lovers. They gleam in beautiful indifference. For the small children, bedtime has come. Time for babies to be packed into their beds and cribs by parents who smile at their cries to be let up just a little longer, to leave the lights on. They indulgently open closet doors to show them that nothing is there. And all around them, the bestiality of the night rises on tenebrous wings. The vampire's time has come. Okay, now on to my treasured book review of Salem's Lot. For those of you who may not be familiar with this Stephen King classic, the book was published on October 17th of 1975. It was King's second novel, and it tells the story of Ben Mears, a writer who returns to his childhood town of Jerusalem's Lot, which the inhabitants kind of shorten and call Salem's Lot. Ben Mears goes to the town of Salem's Lot to exorcise his childhood demons in the hopes of writing a really frightening book, because he is a writer. He plans to rent out the long abandoned Marston house, which is where he had that frightening experience, almost like a psychic supernatural experience as a boy. He had been trying to get into a club of other boys, and on a dare, he has to go into the Marston house, which was a big ramshackle Victorian monstrosity that had been long abandoned and was very frightening, haunted house. He goes in there and he goes up to the second floor. He goes up the steps to the second floor, opens the door, and there he sees Hubie Marston hanging from the rafters, having hung himself, which is actually how he had died 20, 30 odd years earlier. And that experience sort of just stuck with him all of his life, haunted him. However, upon returning to the small town of Salem's Lot, Ben discovers that the Marston house has actually been purchased by someone who also has recently just come to the town. And then soon after that, a boy goes missing, and it's the beginning of a nightmare that eventually engulfs the whole town. Now, I don't want to give too much away, but I do want to say that he does, I want to talk a little bit about some of the characters. He befriends a local high school teacher named Matt Burke, and strikes up a romantic relationship with Susan Norton, another key character. He enlists the help of Dr. Cody and Father Callahan, who's the local Catholic priest. He comes across a boy named Mark Petrie who plays an important role, and they kind of all together discover that there is an evil that's trying to take over and destroy the town of Salem's Lot. I don't think I'm giving too much away by saying that Salem's Lot is a horror story in the vein of Bram Stoker's Dracula, his classic vampire tale. However, it takes place in modern America, which in 1975 was a new idea in the genre of horror fiction and film. Up until that time, most vampire tales always took place in Victorian era of the 1800s, and King's novel ushered in a new era of vampire fiction and films that take place in modern times, which just opened up the door for a whole new way to approach the story of vampires. As I said, I don't want to give too much away of the plot, but there are a couple things, I guess 3 things I kind of want to point out that I really like about this book. The main one is that it's the town itself is a character. King goes into a lot of explanation and description of the town and the people in it, which he really does a great job of. It's a large cast of characters, but he does a great job of describing a whole bunch of characters who, of course, succumb to the evil in Salem's Lot, which is a vampire. The second thing that I wanted to point out was King's description of the Marston house, which kind of harkens back a little bit to The Haunting of Hill House. It reminds me of an emphasis on the house and the sort of evil that infects that house and stays within the house, within the wood and the floor and the ceiling and all the items within the house. They kind of suck up and hold on to evil, which is an interesting idea. And he explores that. And in his description of the town, the Marston house sits up on this hill and seems to overlook the town. And one of the ways he describes it is a dark idol sitting up on its hill, overlooking the town and viewing all of its evil. He also describes the house as almost being like a battery, a psychic battery that sucks in all the evil that takes place in the town, is sort of sucked into the house and makes it and also because Hubie Marston murders his wife and commits suicide, the house is considered unhallowed ground, which is what is necessary in King's story for the vampire to have he can only stay on unhallowed ground, which seems to be an important element. Thirdly, I want to say that the thing that really draws me to this book are the characters, of course, which is any good book that you love. It's of course the characters that you're drawn to, but Stephen King really draws these characters beautifully in Salem's Lot, and he has the one thing though that he does do is he has no trouble sacrificing those characters to the story, which for these beautifully drawn main characters, that is a thing it's difficult for writers to do, is to sacrifice the characters you've invested in. But from King's standpoint, he kills off just about everybody in the story except for two of the main characters, which I don't want to give away who those are, and just in case you have not read the book. But I know as a writer myself how difficult that is to cut down your characters and sacrifice them to the story. But I give him a lot of credit for being able to do that. And to be honest with you, I think it's something I'm going to do throughout my trilogy of novels, Rivendell trilogy. I'm not going to be afraid to cut them out if it feeds the story. For me, it's really important to talk about my personal feelings about the book, because it's what makes it one of my treasured books in my collection of books that I love. I was at the tender age of 15 when Salem's Lot was published, and I was given a paperback copy, and it was one of those books that I read over and over again because I just love the world that Stephen King created. And there are a few books that I have ever read that frightened me so much that I had to put the book down in the middle of reading and then take it up later because it frightened me so much. It may have been my tender age, I was just 15 at the time, and back in 1975, 15 was a lot younger sometimes than it seems like 15-year-olds are today in terms of what they have seen visually or read in their lives. I don't know if that's true or not, but it sort of seems that way to me. But I remember one time while reading the book that I had to put it down and wait until morning to finish the chapter that I was reading. I remember at the time, my childhood bedroom, I had two single beds, and one of the beds was right up against the window, the one that I slept in. And it was one of those low windows, so that my bed actually, the window went all the way down beyond the mattress. And I remember I think I was reading, there are three scenes in the book that really just chill me. But the one thing that I think I was reading at the time was where Danny Glick, the child that becomes a vampire, comes to the window, and Stephen King describes him as almost being like a fly clinging to the window. And he's asking Mark, the other kid in the movie, trying to get him to let him in, because in the classic vampire tale, a vampire can't come in unless it's invited. And this seems to hold true in Stephen King's version of a vampire tale. But anyway, he talks about him clinging to the window and with this white face and the teeth and it just petrifies Mark. He says it is a frightening feeling. And I was sitting there reading this, really scary part of the book. And I remember the curtains that I had on the window wouldn't ever close all the way. They always seemed to pop open as I'd move in bed. The curtains would open up, and they were open. And I remember looking out into the blackness, And I just thought, you know, I'm going to look out that window and I'm going to see a white face looking in at me. And it just like, I was like, oh my God, I got to put this book down. I put the book down, turned out the lights, and went to sleep. And this was late at night. I, you know, was up reading. So everybody else was asleep in the house, and it was like dead silence. You know, so, you know, there are a few times that I've ever read, I mean, there are movies that will affect me that way, where I'm like, oh my God, you know, but never a book that made me feel that way. So I have to give Stephen King credit for being able to really, you know, scare the socks off of me in that way. So that sort of is my kind of personal experience with the book that I think made it one of my, you know, top 5 favorites of all time. There are 2 other scenes in the book that are just really get to you, and the second one is when Matt Burke has invited Mike Ryerson over, who is very sick, and he dies, and I think Danny Glick comes to him and and sucks his blood and kills him. But you know, Matt Burke's in bed and he hears the sounds. He sort of suspects that something like this might be going on, but he can't believe it. But then he's laying in bed at like 3 a.m. and he hears a child come into the guest bedroom, and you know, and he's so frightened he can't even get out of bed, and his greatest fear is to suddenly see the doorknob turning on his own bedroom door. Of course, it doesn't happen. He survives the night, but it's just he ends up confronting the vampire the next night, and he ends up having a heart attack. But anyway, the other scene that I wanted to mention was when the 2 boys, Danny Glick, when he becomes a vampire, or his little brother is taken, they are going through the woods at night, and it's the almost, you know, they're going from their house through a wooded section, crossing a creek, out to the street, and it's after dark, and they're being chased by someone in the woods. I'll just say that, and it's the most frightening scene you can imagine. Now, I've had this old paperback for years, this old paperback copy. Of course, it wasn't the original paperback that I had of Salem's Lot, which I'd gotten in 1975. I had read that so many times that it sort of just fell apart, wasn't being used. You know, I couldn't really use it anymore. So I had gotten this one probably in the 90s sometime. But recently I got a new larger size paperback that had the same kind of color graphic and motif on it that was given to me as a present, I think, over the holidays. I haven't read it yet, so this will be, you know, like a new, you know, breaking in a new copy. But one of the things I have really wanted is to get a good hardcover edition of the of Salem's Lot. I never had the original hardcover that came out in the 70s that had the big O with the illustration in the center. I didn't have that. So I've always wanted a nice hardcover edition of the book. To be honest, I have been coveting the Deluxe special edition hard copy that was printed by Cemetery Dance Press. It was a limited edition that featured a black and red slipcover. The cover being like a black matte, and the text being a shiny print on the cover of Salem's Lot in red, which is just really beautiful looking. It has inside that, it has a beautifully printed dust jacket that features the Marston house, an illustration. And on the inside of this, you know, it's an oversized edition. There is a map of Salem's Lot, and it is filled with gorgeous color illustrations of the key moments from the book. I have to admit, I have been lusting after this edition, but recently I missed it when it came out. I just was not looking for it at the time, didn't even realize it was being printed. And it was a limited edition. I think a lot of them were signed copies, which go for a really high price now. But recently I was looking at it thinking, I'd love to go ahead and get one of these. I was looking on eBay and different places that they were being sold, and the unsigned copies are being sold for about $500 each. And a signed copy can be anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. So that's sort of out of my budget for a single book. But I'm hoping, and this is another thing I wanted to talk about with the release of the new film that's going to be coming out this year, maybe they'll come out with a new hardcover edition, maybe something even better. So, which kind of leads me to the fact that I do want to talk about the upcoming film. I've been watching with excitement the movie news ever since it was announced that Stephen King's, Salem's Lot would get a big budget, big picture treatment. And I think it was announced probably 2 years ago, or maybe a year and a half. Right around the time that the pandemic began. So there hasn't been a lot of movie info to be had about the making of this film. I do know a couple things. It was originally announced that James Wan would be involved as a producer. And of course, he worked on all the Conjuring films. And then it was announced that Gary Dauberman, who wrote the screenplay for It, and has also wrote the screenplay for this film, would be directing. And then slowly, just over the last couple of months, cast information has been released. If you go to IMDb, you can see a list of the cast, which is really sort of top tier. I'm really excited. And also, if you look a little bit deeper, into the special effects, the cinematography, all the people involved have been involved in large, big budget films. So this isn't going to be one of those, quick knockoffs. Because ever since the TV movies have come out, and I think there have been 3 based on Salem's Lot. The one that came out in the 70s, and there were with David Soul, and then one came out in either the 90s or the early 2000s with Rob Lowe playing Ben Mears, and then there's another one that was sort of like a sequel in there somewhere. That really, wasn't very good. As much as people love that original movies that came out in I guess it was the late 70s or early 80s. I think it was late 70s. I think Tobe Hooper worked on that. He did Poltergeist and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. A lot of people really love that TV movie films version, the TV movie version. But it just doesn't have the budget, and it never really captured, I feel like, the soul of the Stephen King's original work. So one of the things I am excited about is that this movie is going to be based on the book, not so much the films that have come out so far. So, or the TV movies. So anyway, I'm really excited about it. The film is set for release on September 9th of this year, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it in the theater this fall. And hopefully maybe what I'll do is do a review of the film when it comes out. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Stephen King's Salem's Lot. It's of course, one of my treasured books. Always will be high on my list of books. No matter what type of list I put together, it's always going to be, within the top 5 or top 10 of the books that I love. So I wanted to share that with you today. If you haven't ever read Salem's Lot, I recommend getting out there and buying a copy and reading it. If it's been a long time, you might want to give it a second read and see what you think after looking at my review today. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today. I have something a little special planned for next week's video, but I won't give it away now. I'll let it be a surprise. So anyway, I will see you guys then.